for some people, that last 10 or 15 years of their life has a ton of impact, not just on them, but even on their grandkids, their kids, great grandkids. You're able to influence and impact beyond just you a lot of times in a way that you can't do at 22.
Hi, and welcome to Beyond the Paycheck. I'm Paula Christine. So I know my son is struggling with this right now, and he hates his job, and he doesn't know what he's due. He's only 24 years old, which is not unusual for a 24-year-old to not really know what they want to do. And so he's struggling, trying to figure out his life. So I've asked Scott Maderer here today to talk with us about how to go from the job you hate to the job you love, or find out what your passion is. So Scott, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, Scott. So how does he even start that?
Yeah. First off, you're right. It's not unusual, especially as a younger person, to kind of have those, what do I want to be when I grow up kind of questions. However, I will say, I actually work with a lot of people up into their 50s, their 60s, that are still kind of asking themselves that question. And I don't think it's a bad question to ask all of the time. Because I think we do kind of get into these patterns of habits and behaviors, and we just kind of do it because we have to do it. I've even had people in like really high paying, I'm one of them, really high paying jobs that everybody else looks at you and goes, oh, it's an awesome job. I can't believe you get paid that much and you get to do this and you get to do that. That's awesome. Everybody would love that. That's a dream job. And you're going, yeah, but I hate it. I really wish I wasn't doing this. So it is a weird feeling to be in. And I think it's important to recognize, first off, it's not normal. It's not unusual. It is a normal thing to have those doubts and to have those considerations and to have that kind of feeling. So normalizing a little bit. And where I always tell people to start is, the first question to ask is, why are you doing the thing that you don't really want to be doing?
Do most people do it because it's a paycheck?
Sometimes. Usually it's the thing that so especially younger people, it's like, I got out of school, I got a job, and somebody's paying me and I'm able to keep a roof over my head and put food on the table. So I'm just going to kind of keep doing it. You almost fall into it by accident. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's folks that are in a kind of a golden handcuff situation. They've got a mortgage, they've got a wife, they've got kids, they've got a family, they've got there's no way I can afford to leave my job because they're paying me, $140,000 a year, and I can't afford to quit. Some people, it's just the habit of not really even stopping to think about what is it that you really want to do. That dream that they had as a child, or that dream that they've had earlier in their life, has kind of gone out to pasture and laid down and died. And they need to reawaken some of that passion and some of those feelings. So all of those are possible reasons that you kind of get stuck in that place.
Okay, Scott. So I have to ask the question, and I'll even answer it when we're done. What did you want to be when you were a little kid?
Well, when I was a little kid, I really, believe it or not, wanted to be a doctor.
Okay.
And I actually even went to school and did work in I have 2 degrees in hard sciences. I did work in medical research. I kind of pivoted from wanting to be a medical doctor to wanting to be more of a researcher. And then I figured out that doing research was a lot about running after grant money. And you spent like 80% of your time trying to find funding and 20% of your time actually doing the work that helps people. I didn't want to do that. Yeah. So I pivoted and became a school teacher. So how about
really?
You?
A school teacher? Mm-hmm. Huh. Mm-hmm. I didn't think you were going to say that. Do you remember the show Bewitched? Mm-hmm. Darren Stevens was a graphic designer. So I wanted to be a graphic designer. So I went to art school and became a graphic designer. The day I graduated, I got a job in sales, and then I became a financial planner probably 15 years later. And here I am today. So it's kind of, people always go, art, math. I'm like, what?
Right.
I work with both sides of my brain, I guess.
Well, so that brings us back to your earlier question about kind of how do I even know what I'm supposed to be when I grow up? So yeah, in my background, I was a school teacher. I did that for 16 years. Then I went into the corporate world, did that for 11 years, was a high powered, kind of executive, senior position.
Doing what?
Flew all over the country. So I actually worked for an educational testing company. Oh, okay. So I worked on projects for state-based testing. So a lot of the tests that people really don't like, I worked for a company that wrote those. So in the words of my students, I went from teaching to testing. So I joined the dark side.
Yes, I would agree with them.
And I did that for 11 years. We can have that conversation on another day. There's actually a lot of good things that the testing industry does that people forget. Most of the bad stuff is actually done by the politicians, not the test. So that's a different.
Yeah, let's just roll our eyes on that one.
Point the fingers a different way. But the work, I did that for 11 years. And then I went into my own coaching business as well. So taking you as an example of somebody who kind of, you were doing the artsy stuff. You wanted to be a graphic designer. You wanted to go down that road. And then you kind of got into sales. So when you talk about those two things, was there something in common between them? Were there things between the two that you found, kind of touched part of you in a similar way, or were they totally different to you?
Totally different. So when I graduated and started looking for a job as a graphic designer from college, now this is way back in the mid 80s. Now I'm showing my age, but the pay was like $25,000. No, I'm going to take that back. It was like $20,000 a year. And I started looking around because I was getting married, and $20,000 a year, even back then, wasn't a lot of money. And I landed in sales, but in advertising sales. So kind of the same thing doing selling airtime on, cable channels. And I fell into who I was, and I was just a natural born salesperson. So it just felt more like me than to be sitting sitting at a drafting desk designing, graphic ads all day. So I just felt right for me.
So there's a couple of things that jump out in that story. So one thing is, a lot of times we think something is going to be a certain way before we do it, right? This is the old thing of, I thought I was going to love this job. And then you go do it and you're like,
yeah, I hate it.
Kind of me with the medical research thing. I went and did enough of it that I went, oh, no, this isn't really what I thought it was going to be. And if you think about it, what I said is I wanted to help people. That was kind of that drive that I had. Even as a very young kid, I've always been the helper kid. I've always been the one that was other people came to me for advice and came to me for help. And I was always tutored people, did those sorts of things. And that was really my passion. That drive was over helping people. And I thought medical research was a route to doing that. Mm-hmm. And then when I discovered that the helping part wasn't really the bulk of the job. So then, I pivoted and became a school teacher. Now, I actually went and became a school teacher because it was an easy pivot, because at the time they had something called alternative certification. And because I had a hard science degree, I could get a certification and teach with not having to go back to college and go back to school and do 4 years of college and all of this. I could do additional kind of ongoing education and go straight into the teaching field. And so I did it that way. And so it was easy. But then what I discovered is the teaching fed that passion that I had for helping and supporting and kind of growing and developing. When I went into the corporate world, again, it was in testing. And yes, there's a lot of negative things around testing, but the part of the job that really got me kind of, fed my energy and got me going was both the leading and developing within the company. So I was in a senior position where I had to develop other leaders. So that part of it. But then on the actual, application doing work side, I could actually see the benefits and the things that the work that I was doing, the positive changes it was making as well, because there are a lot of positive changes. And so it was kind of being able to connect my passion for helping and serving others and finding the places in the work that I did that fed that passion. And the same thing happens now in coaching. It's even more in alignment. I do more of that one-on-one, sit down with someone, change their life, help them figure out what's really important to them, and then help them go actually do it. And so each of those changes at a high level, teaching, working in a company environment, coaching, they seem completely, medical research, they completely different. But the thread between them is the common factor of me trying to find more and more ways that fed that kind of deeper passion. So that's the first step, and a tool that people can use is find the threads in common of the stuff you've already done. And it doesn't have to just be jobs. It doesn't just have to be careers, volunteer activities, stuff you did in the summer, whatever, activities you've done, and start looking for what are the common threads? What are the passion nuggets? What are the things about them that you loved? What are the things about them that you didn't love? And what you're looking for is the pattern, so you can begin to discover, hey, that's maybe a direction, I need to be able to do more of that because that's what I really love and that's what gives me energy. And how can I get rid of some of this other stuff that isn't what gives me energy?
Well, how do you help somebody find that though?
You ask a lot of questions. So the first question is what I just said, the looking backwards question. Kind of go back through, and I literally have people do this. Sit down with a piece of paper and just start writing down, jotting down all of the stuff you've done, all of the career stuff, all of the relationship stuff, all of the whatever, volunteer activities, things you've done for fun. Doesn't matter. Just you're trying to just generate information. And start looking through that and talking about, and for some people, I literally tell them, take a voice recorder and go for a walk and just talk into the voice recorder, because this is kind of about babbling, it's really just about generating information, and you're looking for the common nuggets. So that's the looking backwards activity. Okay. Now, there's another one. We can do a looking forwards activity. So that one is, especially if you're younger, this one might be a little easier for you just because, those of us that have a little bit more gray hair and a little more experience, we've got a little more history to write down, if you're 20, you've still got a lot of history, but you don't have as much as somebody who's 60. I mean, right. Let's just be honest. So the looking forward activity sounds like this. Sit down. And I'm going to give you a scenario just to kind of place it. Imagine it's 5 years from today. So this is 5 years in the future. And you happen to be on a trip and you're in a connecting airport. And as you get off your plane and you start walking to the gate for the connection, right as you get up to the gate, sure enough, the alert comes over and says, plane has been delayed. You've now got a 4-hour layover in an airport in a strange city halfway home. So you do what anyone does when they're stuck in an airport for 3 or 4 hours. You go either look for a restaurant or a bar that you can hang out in so you can get a bite to eat, right, or get a drink and, just kind of hang out for a little while. You got really no other choice. That's what you're going to do. So you go off looking for a restaurant. And as you walk into a restaurant, you happen to see a friend of yours who you haven't seen for the last 5 years. And they walk over to you and they're like, Paula, how are you doing? I can't believe you're here. I haven't seen you for so long. It's great to see you. And you say, it's great to see you. And it turns out they've got a layover too. So y'all are both stuck in the airport for the next 3 hours. So you go grab a table together, sit down in the corner, kind of in a quiet corner, and your friend looks at you and says, Paula, how have you been these last 5 years? So remember, this is 5 years in the future. And you answer your friend, you know what? The last 5 years have been the best 5 years of my life because. And your job is to tell me what comes after the word because.
Oh, if I had to answer that question today, I'd say the last 5 years of my life have been amazing.
So what has made them amazing?
I'm doing a job that I love. I just bought a lake house. I have a very active social life, and I've just been living the dream every day. I get up and I just every day's been a good day for the last 5 years. So.
And so here's where if I was coaching you and we were trying to figure out what's your passion and what you really want to do, I'd start asking follow-up questions. Okay. So you said in there, for instance, you said, I'm doing a job that I love. Okay, great. What do you love about it? What makes it a job you love? Tell me more. And so, and this is what you want to do for yourself. Those of you that are working on this activity for yourself, don't let yourself just give a generic answer, living the dream. Yeah, but what does that mean? Paint me a picture. Tell me about it. What is it that makes this the dream? What is this that makes this the best job ever? What is this that makes the relationships better? You said you've got an active social life. What is it that makes that great? Because guess what? Activity, most people aren't going to say, oh yeah, it's great because it's busy. No, it's great because of something else. It's great because of the connections you're making, the people you're hanging out with, how you're hanging out with them. It's about freedom. It's about flexibility. Those are the things that we're really after. By the way, most people aren't actually after a job that, quote, gives them a lot of money. What they're after is the freedom and flexibility that perhaps having a lot of money gives them.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, money is...
it's the underlying drive.
I think
the money's just a tool.
Yeah, I think a lot of people try to focus on careers that will pay them a lot of income, but necessarily isn't going to make them happy.
Correct. And the truth is, it's even if it is about making a certain amount of money, it's not actually the money that is giving them joy or happiness or anything else. It's the things that money might allow them to do. So it's the freedom, it's the flexibility, it's the being able to travel, it's the being able to spend time with your family, it's those things. And so I've seen a lot of people sacrifice living so that they can get the things that allow them to live, which is kind of, if you think about it, that's like a weird circle that you're on. That's like, wait a minute. So I'm not going to live today. It's almost like I'm going to not live today so that I can live in the future. And I'd rather find a way you can do a little bit of both, right?
Yeah, I saw that a lot when I work with a lot of, like, I live in Detroit, so you work with a lot of auto manufacturing. And a lot of them, worked so many years in the plants, 30, 40 years in the plant, working, as much overtime as they could so that they could have all the toys. But then when you get down, when they're sitting down and talking to you about retirement, and they've lost relationships and friendships because they worked so much
or health.
And they didn't, well, what did you do? Well, they didn't do anything. And it's kind of sad. They worked those hours for the money, but in the end, they didn't really have anything.
The life.
Yeah.
Right. And it is a both and. You do want to prepare for the future. It's not, YOLO, you only live once, live in the moment, it's not that, because then you end up doing a lot of stuff now and, have no future. It's also not, okay, I'm going to work like a slave today and not do anything fun and, only come out of the cave on triple coupon Tuesdays and, give up everything and blah, 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 so that I can have some sort of far off future success. Because guess what? Nobody's guaranteed a future. There is somebody that is not going to wake up tomorrow, and it could be me, we don't know. You're not promised the future. So instead, what it's about is kind of finding those balance points or those places in between where you can find some life today and still prepare and plan and succeed in the future. And it's always doable. And it's in all areas, time, money, it doesn't matter. The process is very similar, because the way we really deal with our time and our money is less how we deal with our time and our money and more about how we deal with ourselves, our own beliefs, our own behaviors, our own activities. Same thing for finding the work you love. It's really less about the work and finding the job, and it's more about the self-discovery and finding you.
Yeah, that's
because when you find you can find it almost anywhere.
That's like when you said last 5 years. I was just thinking about that today because my life changed in the end of 2018 when I ended up being in a marriage that was ending, and I had to find myself. Because you lose yourself. You get to going where you're doing the same things every day, and you just go through life, and you become almost this robot. You don't even know who you are anymore. And then I spent really the last 5 years finding myself. And that's why I can say I've had an amazing life for the past 5 years, because I found her. I like her. She's pretty cool. And I am doing all those things that you talked about, living the passion and stuff. But it took for me that right. Of that, we'll call it a tragedy. I think when a marriage ends, it's a tragedy, to kick me in the ass. I hope I'm allowed to say ass, but kick me in the butt. But for a lot of people, that doesn't happen, and they have to find it within themselves. And I think that's difficult. Like, I'm looking at my 24-year-old son, and he's trying, I think he gets frozen, or, he just doesn't know what to do. And, how do you coach him out of that?
You help them understand that they're actually not making a permanent decision. They're just running an experiment.
Oh,
they're just
like
getting
that.
information.
They're
just getting data. I'm a science person. Remember, my
Right.
background is in
Yeah.
science. That's what I said. So I talk about running experiments. You can talk about it different ways, but that's the language that I use because that's what makes sense for me. And if you think about running an experiment, the purpose of an experiment is not to get the right answer. The purpose for an experiment is to find out information. And by the way, if the information is, oh, that didn't work, that's still good information, And so if you can frame it as this is less about finding that thing that you're meant to do in the life of, this is it, this is the one thing, it's passed down from on high, because that puts a lot of stakes on it, right? That feels like if I screw this up, boy, well, here's the truth. You're not, you can change, you can change your mind. You can make a different decision. You can try something different, but you do need to commit to something long enough to get some data. And as you get that information, what that's telling you is, well, this part I didn't like so much. This part over here, I kind of did. Again, how can I get more of that and less of that? And you begin to change over time. Don't confuse the passion and the purpose with the assignment. What I mean by that is, the passion, the purpose, that's what drives you. That's the internal stuff. This brings me joy. This brings me energy. This feeds me. The assignment is just, what are you doing with it today? The assignment can change. I've done a lot of different things in my life. Most of us have. Young people today are going to do even more because it shows, there's a lot more fluidity in their job placement today than there was back when you and I graduated. So it's kind of that same idea of recognizing it's not a permanent thing. It's always reversible. That's kind of how I think about things. I think in two terms. One is impact and one is reversibility. The more reversible a decision is and the lower the impact, the less time I spend on it. And what I mean by that is if it's a low impact decision and it's easily reversible, just make a decision and move on. Where you want to spend a little bit more time and energy is if it's something that's not easily reversible, like, I don't know, getting married, getting divorced. Those are not easily reversible decisions.
Having
technically they're reversible. Having children, yeah, exactly. These are high impact decisions. They really can change your life. And they also are harder to reverse. They take longer, they take more work. So in general, the less reversible and the more impact, the more time you want to spend on it. Honestly, especially as a young person, when it comes to career and job, it's pretty reversible. There still may be high impact, but reversibility, you can kind of change jobs. It's not as hard as we always make it out to be. Yeah, it still may take some time. And, I get it. You don't just apply for a job and you have a job tomorrow. But really in the greater scheme of things, if you think about your life, it's not going to take forever to change jobs. We're talking months or maybe a year. We're not talking 16 years or 20 years or 30 years of your life.
So what do you talk about? I know we were talking about my son and how young he is, but how do you handle that conversation with someone who's 55 and just lost their job or don't like their job? How do you have that? I mean, is it the same conversation?
Are you still sucking wind?
Huh?
Are you still sucking wind?
Yeah.
It's not too late. It is, yes, there's some pressure on an older person that isn't on a younger person in terms of, the other end of the life. But like my mom's 83rd birthday is at the end of this month. And, she's talking about, I probably don't have that much longer. Okay. Her grandmother, my great grandmother, lived to be in her late 90s. Her great-grandfather lived to be in his late 90s.
She's got a long time to go.
My mom may live to be 105.
Oh, yeah.
This is not an impossibility. And I pointed that out to her. I'm like, you may have 20 or 25 years left. It's entirely possible. So just like you're not promised tomorrow, you're also not promised not tomorrow.
Yes.
And so you still have to live as if your life has meaning and has impact. For some people, that last 10 or 15 years of their life has a ton of impact, not just on them, but even on their grandkids, their kids, great grandkids. You're able to influence and impact beyond just you a lot of times in a way that you can't do at 22. And again, that's not a good or bad. That's just an observation of the fact that you're in a different phase of your life. And so I focus on that. What's the bigger impact what you can have? How can you reach out past you? What can you do today that you've never been able to do before? What is that dream that you've been putting off and delaying? Let's figure out a way to do that.
So what's your 83-year-old mother's dream?
Honestly, my mom is living a great life. She's retired. She actually tutors her my niece's kids, so my cousins. They live in the same town, and she goes over and tutors them 2 or 3 days a week, and does, because they do homeschooling, and she's a retired teacher, so she goes and does that. And then she just lives some of the other, things that she wants to do in terms of volunteer and nonprofit and work like that. She's done a good job over the years of being a steward of her time and her money and putting herself in a position where she's got that freedom and flexibility to kind of do that. So it's and by the way, yes, she lived a life when she was younger too. My mom's one of my heroes. So she's one of those people that I hold out as an example of somebody who did live an inspired life, in that she always took a proactive approach of trying to figure out, okay, what do I need to do next? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? Not in a, driven, have to be successful, be the top dog kind of way, but more in a, what's right for me? What's the next phase of my life, and how do I want to live it out?
I just lost my train of thought.
I do that all the time.
I was thinking about your mom and how nice and how cool that would be to meet her. And I was like, I know I'm supposed to ask something, but I was just thinking about your mom. Well, tell her I said happy birthday.
I will. We're going to go up and see her for her birthday, and I will let her know that you said happy birthday.
So if somebody wanted to make some changes in their life, how would they go about working with you?
So the easiest way, I actually set up a page just for your listeners. So if you go over to inspiredstewardship.com/paycheck, I have a page there. It has all of the resources on it. There's some free things on there that they could get access to, just to kind of, some of those activities I was just talking about. If you want to get access to those, some of those I've shared on there. I actually have a book called Inspired Living that just came out in July, that the information about that is on there. It has some of this exact topic that you're talking about. How do you figure out how to live the life that you want to live? That's really what the book is about. And that's available on there. And then there's also a link there if they wanted to have a conversation with me and learn more about what I do. And that's, again, over at inspiredstewardship.com/paycheck.
It's been a pleasure talking with you today. I always love it when people come on the show and it's not a show, I guess, podcast, and are uplifting and inspiring. And, I know it's about beyond the paycheck, but this means going beyond your paycheck and living the life that you want to live.
Absolutely. That's really what, my coaching is about, is trying to help people figure out a way to live the life that they're really supposed to live, and that they really want to live, that brings joy to themselves and to the people around them.
I'm going to send my son over to your website.
Absolutely.
Maybe, but it's like trying to, you got to find it within yourself first. No matter how much as parents or grandparents or friends you want to inspire someone, they really have to find it within themselves.
Yeah. If he's interested in getting some support and some help, I'd be happy to do it. But you're right. It has to happen at a time when they're ready. The expression that we use in coaching is, I don't want to push a rope. Pulling a rope is fine. And that's part of my job sometimes as a coach, is to do some pulling. But pushing a rope, it's not fun for me, and it's not fun for the rope either.
I'm trying to figure out, how do you push a rope?
You don't. That's the point.
In my mind, I'm like, push a rope?
Yeah. How would you push a rope across the floor? It doesn't go. It just kind of wads up, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah. I've never heard that before. Did you make that up?
I'm Southern, so that's a very Southern expression.
Oh, it's Southern. Yeah. Where are you from?
So I'm from Texas. So
Texas?
I live in South Texas. I live out in the middle of nowhere. I drive an hour to go to the grocery store. So we live out in the country, but we've got high-speed internet. I work with clients all over the world and do what I love. And my commute's all of 30 seconds. So kind of living the dream, like you said.
Yeah. I'm sitting in my house office right now, looking out at the lake, living the dream. So it's been perfect. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome. So if anybody would like to reach out to Scott, we will put it in the show notes. And if anybody would like to talk to me, you can reach me at paulachristine.com. Thanks again, Scott.
Thank you.